So the more stressed we are, the more stressed we become. Our behaviors actually create more stressful actions, which actually affect our bodies in a way that creates more stress. So it's really interesting in a way that a human nature, we actually are creating a lot of that stress ourselves with no real clear plan on how to resolve that stress. So I understand what you're saying is that, when you're in high conflict situations and you're not getting much gratitude for for your efforts, it's pretty soul destroying. So I think it's important for people in property management that they have a stress plan, an actual plan on how they're going to resolve their stress, which is probably something fairly new. And I know the questions probably should be, well, how can I plan for something I don't even know about, or I don't even know that I have? And that's probably something that we've seen in our retreats is that a lot of people don't even recognize that they've got stress or they are stressed because it's happening in the foreground and in the background of our lives. So when we get to a point where we're in a stressful situation, we can see what's coming. It's like getting a punch in the face. You can see it, we maybe didn't, but it's happened and you've got a punch in the face. But there's underlying stress happening in the background that we're not privy to and we don't understand it. And that's the stress that I think that changes our behaviors and steers us away from being healthy and having a more of a healthy life, I suppose.
Thank you so much for joining me this afternoon, Mark. Now, Mark is from a company called A Conscious State, and it's a health and wellness business based on the Gold Coast. And Mark and his partner, Maya, who is a long-term friend of mine, we got together recently and we put together a real estate retreat designed for property managers and people working in real estate. Now, I will let you start off, Mark, and just share a little bit of information about yourself. But after the retreat, we came up with a bit of an idea. We were so shocked at how much people were being affected by stress. We wanted to share some of Mark and Maya's expertise around stress and stress management with our community. So we put together a little bit of a series called From Chaos to Calm, and we're going to be nutting out lots of stuff on the topic of stress and stress management. Mark, tell me a little bit about yourself and your business.
Yes, thanks, Kylie. Yeah, so I probably just go back a bit from this point on where I am now to when I sort of started. So I had my own business at the age of 21. I'm 46 now. So I was in business for 25 years in a branding company, which dealt in a lot of marketing. And as you know now, like marketing's moved so fast that there's so many things to do. And it's not a business that you can actually put processes around because you can't really put any processes around creative. So in that business, it was highly deadline driven. So there was a lot of pressure. And at many points we had about 15 staff, 10 to 15 staff. So there was a lot of moving bodies and a lot of energy in our office. And there's a lot of high pressure to perform each day and also hit, return on investment targets, selling targets, KPIs, and also deliver creativity that was going to blow the clients away. So it was a high stress situation that I lived for many, many years. And in my early 30s, I started to get serious anxiety to the point where my hand would be shaking every day. And I put it down to I drink too much coffee and, I'm just busy and, that it's my work. And I would just sort of shrug it off. But over time, over the 10-year period of my 30s, getting towards my later 30s, it's really started to affect me and affected me in every aspect of my life. Now I reflect on it, it was affecting me everywhere. So by the time I was 40, I went through a divorce after 20 years of marriage. My business just sort of as part of that, started to just sort of combust really. And everything in my life came undone. I hit a really low point. So, and part of that process was I wanted answers. I was like, why do I have this anxiety? I was through that 10 years, I was going to GPs and psychologists, but there was no one could give me an answer. And, I was towards the late 30s, I was on a mixture of, I suppose, drugs and medications to try and resolve the anxiety, but it was just always there. It was always stress and anxiety there. So at the age of 40, after having this sort of huge, I suppose, collapse of my life, I went searching for answers, and I sort of became obsessed with personal growth and stress being a major part of that. And part of that learning was that I realized that when our stress is a major contributing factor to preventing us from growing, because when our bodies are under this constant state of pressure, a constant state of stress, we're unable to be our true selves and live in our true nature. So I set out for the last 5 years, I've set out trying to understand what stress is. And it's been a really interesting sort of time and period, in my life now, so vastly different to what it was before. So when I came out of the agency, I wanted to try to do something really different. It, it sort of ended up, I started counseling people and started helping them with similar problems and things that I'd already been through. And what was interesting, there was always this underlying component of stress. Over numbers of, and seeing a lot of numbers of people, I started seeing patterns of stress, and I could see that it was coming in from many different ways. It wasn't just what we originally associated stress to be like. So I originally associated stress to be at work and busy and just doing a high volume of work under lots of pressure. But I didn't take into consideration that there was stress happening to me in every aspect. And at the time, there was no way that I could even comprehend that, because no one could give me the answers. I remember in my first psychology meeting, the psychologist said, "Mark, you just need to let go." And I was literally screaming at him because I was so tense and so wound up. I was saying, "Just tell me, let go of what, and how do I let go?" I can even remember my hands being so actually clenched like this. And then that sort of spurred on in my 40s in the last 5 years. So what does that actually mean? And trying to find an answer or some sort of resolution to that.
And is that how Conscious State was born? If you are anything like me, you think you know your rent roll numbers. Well, I thought I did, until I had a rent roll health check, and I was quite literally shocked. The money I was leaving on the table was astounding. And this is not something that I'm proud to admit. There were missed management fees, let fees, advertising, and lease renewal fees not being charged, and properties even without bonds. And all of this was happening despite monthly audits being conducted in my business. So how did I uncover all these gaps in my valuable income? Well, I had a rent roll due diligence from my good friend Tazi, aka the Rent Roll Queen and founder of the Tazi Way, a specialist in rent roll due diligence, business valuation, and management rights. The Tazi Way is the innovative force driving the real estate industry. With 25 years of business and real estate acumen, they find gaps and risks in your agency to find undiscovered value. If you'd like to book your business in for a rent roll due diligence, head to the link in the show notes and mention That Property Mum for a 10% discount.
Yeah. So through that process, I met my lovely partner, Maya, that you know really well. And she, on her own, Maya's a wealth of knowledge in natural medicine and biochemical processes and how the body works. So we have these conversations all the time. And there was a lot of understanding of how, of what Maya knows incorporated with what I was experiencing, that putting this new idea together, I suppose that it's the conscious state, which is helping people, I suppose, grow through their challenges, and with stress being probably the underlying factor of everything.
Well, look, property management is a really high stressful industry. And I've given you guys a bit of a background on it. It's a really negative industry as well. And nobody ever calls you up and says, "Thank you so much for fixing my broken window," or for having the rent, getting me an extra $20 in rent every week. People only ever call you up to whinge and complain or tell you, you were 5 minutes late on fixing something for me. So, and that, of course, that negativity only escalates the stress levels for property managers. And it is one of the biggest reasons why a lot of people don't stay in this industry either, is because of stress. But stress is unavoidable in life, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. But it's a sort of a cycle. So the more stressed we are, the more stressed we become. Our behaviors actually create more stressful actions, which actually affect our bodies in a way that creates more stress. So it's really interesting in a way that a human nature, we actually are creating a lot of that stress ourselves with no real clear plan on how to resolve that stress. So I understand what you're saying is that, when you're in high conflict situations and you're not getting much gratitude for your efforts, it's pretty soul destroying. So I think it's important for people in property management that they have a stress plan, a natural plan on how they're going to resolve their stress, which is probably something fairly new. And I know the questions probably should be, well, how can I plan for something I don't even know about, or I don't even know that I have? And that's probably something that we've seen in our retreats, is that a lot of people don't even recognize that they've got stress or they are stressed, because it's happening in the foreground and in the background of our lives. So when we get to a point where we're in a stressful situation, we can see what's coming. It's like getting a punch in the face. You can see it, we maybe didn't, but it's happened and you've got a punch in the face. But there's underlying stress happening in the background that we're not privy to and we don't understand it. And that's the stress that I think that changes our behaviors and steers us away from being healthy and having a more of a healthy life, I suppose.
Yeah, we were blown away by that real estate retreat that we hosted for property managers. Just, for me, when we set out to do the retreat, I was thinking that we're going to deal with workplace stress. Property management's stressful. But we were so shocked to discover it wasn't actually the workplace stress that people were dealing with, was it? If you're ready to be a super organized, focused, and productive property manager, buckle up, because Colmio is about to revolutionize the way that you work. Colmio is the driving force behind property management excellence in residential real estate. Now picture this, a comprehensive end-to-end system designed to be the beating heart of your property management tasks, manage your properties, owners and tenants, and handle payments, inspections, and even marketing listings without leaving the platform. Colmio is designed to be an all-in-one solution to all your property management needs. And here's the game changer. Colmio isn't just software. It's been awarded the most innovative prop tech scale up in 2023. Yes, you heard it right. Colmio has been recognized for their groundbreaking approach to property management software. How good is that? So property managers, whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out, dive into the future of property management with Colmio. You can book in a demo with the team today and go in their weekly draw for a Prezi gift card worth $100. All you need to do is to head to the link colmio.com/thatpropertymum, and Colmio is KOLMEO.
No, it was interesting. Well, that's where it starts with. It starts with, this is my stress. But there's always underlying insecurities, I think, and fears and traumas that, that have happened to us through childhood trauma can be for a person. Trauma can be that someone stole their lollipop when they were 5. That it doesn't necessarily have to be this big dramatic event. Necessarily, it's our relationship to those events that's more important, that creates the trauma. So what we saw at our event is when we started discussing the stress that the property managers thought they were dealing with, which is really true, and it is happening for them. It's really only on the surface level, because they understand what that is. So they're actually able to, in some ways, deal with that or understand it to a certain degree. So they have the ability to process a lot of that. But it's the underlying stress in the background that is confusing. It's that confusing, with things that are happening in their relationships, things that are happening, with their body, specific conditions, a lot of issues around weight and how stress is impacting our bodies. And, because we actually create more stress because we're trying to live to a certain expectation and standard. And another thing I think out of the retreats for property managers, which was really interesting, was the behavior that came out from being in a stressful situation. What I noticed is that a lot of the property managers, the behaviors were quite unique unique in the way that they were unique to the industry. because I noticed behaviors like obsessive compulsiveness in their environment, that necessity to control the environment. I suppose some of the factors that came out of the retreat that were underlying underneath the overarching stress. So I see that there's the foreground stress, which you can see and that's happening at the workplace. But then there's so many other things that are happening in the background that we don't even see. And they're the things, at a conscious state that we're trying to pull together and help people understand so they can let them go and start resolving those stresses.
We did a really good exercise actually in the retreat, which I found super valuable. And that was, I'm not sure what you called it, but it was that stress release exercise where we actually had to write down and maybe you could talk us through that a little bit for anyone that might be interested in working out what the foreground, what the background stress is, and give them a little bit of a process to help deal with that.
Yeah, well, it was interesting when we did that process because I've used the process many times, but in this instance, I thought they were going to write down the stresses about their work, but I didn't actually say that. I actually said write down the stresses, so they actually did what I asked them to do. And with those stresses, they started going through the workplace, and many people had stresses, a lot of stresses from the workplace that they were looking into, and they didn't really delve into their personal life too much. But then others were quickly out of the workplace and dealing with the heavier stresses. And it was amazing how, I suppose, brave they were to go into that in a group scenario, how brave they were to go into that scenario. And the exercise, I think, is really important because what it does is when you start writing it down, it comes out of your right brain, which is your imagination. And instead of just mulling around in your imagination, when you write it down, it brings it to your left brain and it makes it very clear and it gives you clarity about the problem. So when you write it down, you can actually see it. So you're turning something that was subjective into something objective, something tangible. Now you can actually pick it up, screw it up and throw it away. You can start dealing with that. So it was a fascinating exercise and we just got so much out of that on that day. It was amazing.
We might even do a little downloadable for everybody that they can download that stress release exercise and identify some of their stresses just to get them clarity around that. But one of the other topics I wanted to talk about, which I thought is really valuable for property managers as well, about the damage that long-term ongoing stress does to our bodies.
There's been so much talk of stress, overwhelm, and burnout in property management lately. Do you want to know how I overcame all of that? Yes, I hit rock bottom multiple times, but I got myself a virtual assistant. Actually, not just one, but 3. But I didn't just get any VA, I got a PMVA. What are they? Well, they are the most well-trained in the business. And not only that, you also have a backup VA. So that essentially your business is never without admin support ever again. And my health, time, and business has never looked back. Your PMVA can take care of tasks like rent arrears, lease preparation and renewals, maintenance follow-up, routine inspection bookings, data entry, audits, prospecting, inbox management, and so much more. And the best part of implementing a PMVA in my business was that it freed up my time and my team's time to take care of important things like customer service. What makes me feel so safe is that PMVA is owned by Tiffany Botel, both here and in the Philippines, making my data secure and giving me more control over the VA arrangement. So head to the link in the show notes to book in your discovery call with Lady Boss Tiff.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. So we have these stresses and this is the background that I'm talking about. So we see the foreground. The foreground looks like a stressful situation, but in a time, and out of fairness for all of us is that we haven't really been taught how to heal ourselves or how to deal with stresses. It's, we put on a brave face. And that's what I noticed. A lot of property managers are under a lot of stress, but they also have a lot of responsibility. So they need to turn up every day. And to do that, they have to put on a brave face. So they don't necessarily have time or the skills to go in and resolve that stress in the moment. So what happens is they carry that stress and it can get into our tissues and it can actually go into our body. So that accumulative stress can cause chronic illness. It can cause weight gain. It can cause bloating and also so many other sort of conditions. and illnesses. So it's really important to make sure that we have a plan to resolve that, to resolve stress.
Yeah, well, I can attest to the damage it can do. Obviously, I've shared my story in our communities and our followers before about how stress contributed to me getting a heart condition. So, this for me is a really important topic that we should be sharing with as many people as we can, not just in property management, but people in general who are struggling with stress. And to be honest, I didn't even know that I had stress and anxiety. For many years, I just, as you said, put on the brave face, kept turning up for work, kept, running my kids around. And, I had adrenal fatigue and burnout and, it was no good to anybody really. But, you have to just, you fight through it, I guess. And then like you went on that journey of, understanding why this was happening, what's going on. This is not normal. And yeah, and that's how we've ended up here. But another interesting relationship between stress and conflict. I was really keen to dive into that a little bit with you as well, because conflict is a huge issue in property management. It's either with our landlords or our tenants, sometimes even our tradespeople. And I've recently had an example of that in our business. And then, not only that, you've got your colleagues and your bosses. And then, of course, then that's just the workplace. And then you go home and you've got all the conflict at home, especially if you've got teenage children. So, yeah. So what's that relationship like with stress and conflict?
Well, and I've spoken to you before about my theory of Mentos and a Coke bottle. So I consider stress, if your body's like a Coke bottle and you're adding stress into the Coke bottle and it's slowly filling up over time, what happens is when it gets to the top, it's like nothing, we keep trying to shove more in. So what happens is it's like putting a Mentos in the Coke bottle. But it's only a matter of time before it explodes. And when it explodes, it's going to be catastrophic. It's not going to be like a small incident. So what we try and do is actually just take the lid off slowly off the Coke bottle. So we just slowly unwind the Coke bottle, because if we take the lid off fast, we all know what that looks like, and it's going to just make a big mess. So part of the process of what we do is that we just slowly take the lid off bit by bit. And as you take the lid off, it actually empties the Coke bottle back down, and to get your stress levels back down to its normal rate. And what was interesting about the retreat, and some of the girls that were in the retreat who were in their early 20s made comments like, "Oh, I don't think I've ever understood what it's like to be relaxed or to relax after they experienced the retreat, because we're not very good at doing nothing. We're not very good at being still or sitting in silence and doing nothing. We have this sort of attitude that, every moment needs to be filled in our lives. So to, make that hashtag best life sort of thing. So we cram everything in, and it's, as soon as there's a gap, we fill it with something. And even when we're relaxing, we're doing something. So the relationship it goes hand in hand, the conflict and stress. I see stress, accumulated stress is a body in flux, which is a body in conflict. And then it's, even today, if you go to the doctors, they'll say stress can create a mental illness. So for me, that there's, all those things equal a body in flux. It's got really not less to do with the mind and more about the body. So we have the saying, Mara and I have the saying that, if you heal the body, the mind will follow. So what we're going to do is look at avoiding getting ourselves back down to that calm state. And what's interesting is that when you're in a calm state, there's something magical that happens. The conflict just sort of disappears. Like, I noticed that in parts of my life that I was manifesting a lot of conflict. People were coming to me who are in high conflict because I was in high conflict. So it's sort of that idea of, two frequencies matching. So what we're doing is trying to bring that frequency down, trying to bring that energy back down and make it calm, so you can attract other things that are calm in your life. I don't know if it's a pretty high end concept. But it's something that's really works for me personally.
No, I can totally relate to that. As soon as I am in that crazy, busy mentality, and, you just seem to attract the same sort of thing. So I totally understand where you're coming from with that. Mark, thank you so much for that. We are going to keep having a chat over the next couple of weeks. Mark and Maya have prepared some content for us. We've got some blogs we're releasing over the next couple of weeks. and an ebook and some downloadable content worksheets and stuff for you guys as well. So stay tuned for all of that. Mark, is there anything else that you want to leave us with? Some parting wisdom, something that that property managers could go away with today and identify or deal with or manage their stress?
Yeah, well, definitely the conflict, and with something we talked about in a retreat, which everyone commented they took away from, even from the feedback that we got back, was that other people's stress is not yours. So you don't have to take it on board. So being aware of what's yours. So through this process of understanding our stress, getting in touch with it and knowing what is ours, we're able to separate ourselves from other people's stress and go, well, hang on, that's not mine. That's their stress. And we can actually change. We can, instead of getting involved in their stress and creating and being involved in a conflict, we can actually take a sidestep and see that person and meet them with compassion rather than meet them with fuel to the fire.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Mark. Really happy that you joined me today.
No worries. Thank you very much, Holly.
One thing I dread doing is chasing up rent arrears and debt collection. It takes up valuable time and it can often lead to conflict. But it is a necessary evil when you are running a property management business. But there is an easier way to make sure your tenants' rent is paid on time and in advance, and it's called RentPay. RentPay is a secure and simple to use payment platform that saves agents time and money with fast, accurate receipting while making life better for renters. To top it all off, you'll never have to worry about dishonor fees or unknown deposits again. How good is that? Cleared funds are deposited straight into your bank account in a single daily payment with accurate receipting and reference numbers auto-assigned, and it's fully compatible with all trust accounting systems. It's a super flexible payment option for tenants who can pay rent in multiple ways, including direct debit, credit card, or instantly pay with Payer ID. Fees are minimal, and RentPay even helps with the rent arrears process by automating reminders to renters when payments are due or missed. If you are currently paying large bank fees, struggling with constant dishonors because the funds aren't cleared when their funds land in your trust, or wasting time chasing up unknown payments, I encourage you to book in a free demo with RentPay and give yourself and your renters an easier way to pay rent. Can I ask you a quick favour before you leave this episode? Now, we all know how important reviews are for businesses these days, and mine is no different. If you could spare just a minute to follow, rate and review this podcast, it would mean a lot to me. In fact, what would get me super excited is if you share this podcast with someone in the industry who you think might need to hear some of the episodes right now. And if you'd like to find out more about working with me or any of the products I have to help you start, grow or scale your property management business, head to my website, thatpropertymum.com.au, or check out the links in the show notes.